All right, we're back. The Crave Show with JRuss and Chris. It's good to be back, man. It's been a couple of weeks since we had a chance to sit down and talk.
Yeah, it's great to be here. What'd you do?
I have been actually last week, all week long, we were up in Colorado with my wife's family, and her parents and her sister and family and all of our boys and stuff. And dude, the weather was fantastic. I was getting up every morning. I'd go outside. We just rent this little cabin, and so I'd go outside in the morning, get up about 6:30 or so, and I had a little fire ring. So I'd build a campfire, sit out there. Tanya would come out. We'd have some coffee together, just sitting by the fire, drinking coffee. The cold mountain air, the trees, and the river's right there. Hummingbirds flying around. Every once in a while, we'd see a deer or an elk off on the mountainside, and it's pretty awesome. One morning, I could actually see my breath. It was so chilly. So it was really awesome. We did some fishing, a little bit of hiking, just hanging out, playing cards, dominoes, just being together.
Sounds pretty nice.
Yeah, it was very nice. Yeah. We didn't catch as much fish. Like usually we go up there, we go to a place that's called Platoro, Colorado. Are you familiar with Platoro?
Mm-mm.
You know where Alamosa is?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I think it's probably a little bit south. It's probably southwest, just a tiny bit from Alamosa. We drove into Alamosa one day and then went back. You just go on these dirt roads for 30 miles up in the mountains, little mountain village. And there's a reservoir and then the Conejos River. And so we fish on the river, fish in the reservoir. Usually, because we go like every year, every summer, usually I'll catch, every time I catch a fish, I'll get a little rock, just a small rock, and put it in my pocket so that I can keep track of how many, because I just like to know.
Yeah.
So, and I actually have a jar here at my house with all the rocks that I've caught over the years,
Nice.
or all the fish, that I've caught. So I'll at the end of the week, I can count up and see how many fish I've actually caught, like not guessing, not estimating, but actually know. So a normal week for me, I usually catch at least anywhere from 60 to 80 fish. Well, this year I caught 18. Yeah. So, and my second son, Eason, he likes to fish more than any of my sons. He was so like just making fun of me because he outfished me from day one. The first day that we went out fishing, we got there, we unloaded, and he and I are like down at the river fishing. He caught the first fish. And then that first day he caught 5 and I caught 2. And then throughout the whole week, he ended up with 24 and I only had 18. So he was just like making fun of me and laughing and, oh, what's wrong? You crying yourself to sleep and saying all this stuff, which is exactly what I would be saying to him if I had outfished him. So and I was like, the only reason you're happy is because this never happens. Like I was trying to come up with anything I could to get him back, but it wasn't working.
No need to wonder where it came from.
Yeah, exactly. So it's fun though, seeing him like have fun fishing and that he was catching more than me. And then my youngest son, the 11-year-old Solon, I think he actually caught the biggest one for the week out of everybody, like the whole family. He had a really nice brown trout one day at the lake, like really nice one. So that's cool.
Did you put on a river runs through it at night so you guys could think about fishing even more?
No, we should have. I think my oldest son, he's not a big fisher. He's just kind of gotten into fly fishing, which I've never done very much of, so I don't really know much about it. But my father-in-law and then like another relative who's like a cousin, I guess, he's really into fly fishing. So he was kind of teaching Corbin, my oldest, and I think he would love that movie. I should have played it for him. He would like it.
I mean, it's a good movie if you don't like to fish, but if you're a fisherman, it's a good one.
Yeah.
There's a part in it that always kind of stick. I mean, I really like the movie. I've seen it a bunch of times, and that's sort of my style. Like when I like something, I'll watch it again and again and again. And there's a part in it where I think the older brother has returned from college, like 6 years away or something like that, and he's going to go fishing with his brother who stayed in the small town, and I think he went to school, but just like a little local school or something, and they do go fishing, and he's pretty annoyed with himself because he's not in the rhythm anymore, and like he's having trouble with the fly, and his brother, who's become even more into fishing, is just like, oh, you're putting it in the wrong place, and and he's just getting more and more annoyed. But then there's a point where he catches a fish and he's kind of back in the rhythm, and so he's going to go catch up with his brother, and he says a line like, "In my absence, my brother became an artist," where he broke away from all the teachings of their father, who was very strict about this cast and comes back and this cast, and he's got his own style, and it was just a really cool look, in my opinion, about the changes that happen to everybody. But when you're gone for a little while, you don't necessarily see those as sharply as when. I mean, you see them more sharply when you've been gone than someone who's just been there the whole time. So that is the cool part.
I have not watched that movie, and I've probably only watched it once, actually, and I think I was too young to truly appreciate it, because I remember watching it and thinking it had some cool parts, but overall, I thought it was really boring. But I think I was probably like 13 or 14 when I watched it, because that was a long time ago when that movie came out, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean middle 90s.
It's got Brad Pitt, isn't it? Brad Pitt in it?
And he's young.
He's the younger brother that stays. Yeah. And then wasn't it something about he was like doing like side casting, and that his dad was like big time against that or something?
It's like I think he called it shadow casting casting, rainbow cast. He said if you did it right, a rainbow would build with the water mist that he got to come up. But that's another interesting point as well, that if you go back and watch that movie now, it'd be super interesting to me to hear what you think of it, like, because obviously you are very different than when you first saw it, and I'm having sort of that experience myself, because I am rereading Dune, that I haven't read since high school, which I liked back then, but I am so different than that person that read it in high school that it's just amazing to read the book again and take it in a different way, because I'm different.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
How far are you through it?
I'm like 60% done with the first book. And I've watched both of the new movies, and I absolutely loved them both. And I really, really also loved the whatever 80s version of Dune that they made with Sting. And
Sting was in that one?
Yeah, he was Fade Rautha. He was the son of the Baron who fought with the lead male character and was killed.
So the book right now, how is it compared? Like, do you like it as much, more? Is it different? Like, does it feel different this time?
I remember bits of it, but honestly, like things that happened when I was 17 are so distant to my life now, that I really don't recall that many of them. But I'm super enjoying the book, and it's interesting, I guess, because like when I said about A River Runs Through It, I watched the original Dune many times, and I've already seen the new movies probably 5 times each. And it's interesting, I guess, to see the parts that they took out and put in the different movies, and really interesting to think about why they chose to leave some things out or include them, or sort of move where they are, or who said what. They'll choose somebody else to say it that isn't accurate to the book, but really interesting. And what a lot of people don't know, or maybe haven't thought about, is that the guy who wrote it, he was a champion kind of psychedelics back in the 70s. And the book is basically centered around spice, which is a psychoactive substance that changes the user in very positive ways. But that's a little bit. Most people don't think of psychedelics on Earth as changing people in a positive way. Well, some people do.
Yeah, I think more and more people are.
Yeah,
at least open to the possibility, right? With a lot of the research and conversations that are going on now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
When you were talking about, I don't remember exactly what you said, but it made me think of, when you said that quote from that movie, River Runs Through It, you said, while I was gone, my brother became an artist. Yeah. Just the idea of people changing and being different. And even like with the book, you said you're not the same person now that you were in high school or whatever. it made me think of when we were living in Thailand. This guy said to us, he was a Thai man, and he said he was talking to a bunch of missionaries, so foreign, like, all mostly white people, Americans, not all, but mostly, had this seminar thing, and he was one of the teachers, speakers, and he was talking about that every culture you have. He said, imagine that you're wearing a set of sunglasses, and I don't think he came up with this idea. It's because I've heard other people say it too, so you may have heard it. But he said, imagine as an American, you're wearing a pair of sunglasses, and those sunglasses are yellow colored. So everything you look at in the world has a yellow tint to it. And you can't take those sunglasses off. It's just because you're American, because you grew up in America or Texas or wherever, Arizona, doesn't matter. You have this tint, right, that you see and perceive the world. And he said, Thai people, imagine that they wear, their sunglasses are blue. So everything they see in the world has a blue tint to it. And so and they can't take them off and they can't change it. And he said, but you as a person living in Thailand, you're trying to put on those blue sunglasses. You're trying to see things from the perspective of a Thai person in a Thai culture, in a Thai society, Thai language, all that stuff. And he said, but you still have those yellow sunglasses on. So when you try to put on those blue ones, now yellow and blue make green. So he said, so you now see everything through a green lens. And he said, and you'll never, ever be able to go back to a yellow lens, and you'll never, ever get to a blue lens. You cannot get, because you're not Thai. You weren't born with Thai parents in a Thai family. You didn't grow up, there's so many things that you'll never be able to do and experience and see. As much as you want to see it from their perspective, you just can't. And now that you've been here for long enough, you've been changed. You can't ever go back to yellow lenses. And that was told to me. I mean, not to me. I was in that audience. That was in 2003 in Bangkok. This is 2024, 21 years later. Like, that has stuck with me because I've really seen that, how much, and that's not at all what you're talking about with the river runs through it, but for some reason it made me think of it, but just the idea of changing and being different. And I'm very thankful for all the time, for the 8 years we spent in Thailand. I'm thankful that I see now through a green lens. I like it. I think it's a good thing. But it was just such a really simple analogy, a simple, way to think of things, but very profound. And it's kind of helped me a lot. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, a lot of things, to be honest. I was thinking about it could be viewed as almost a little bit of a negative thing, what he's saying. Like, you just can't get into the mindset of somebody that you weren't born into that culture. But none of us chose that. As far as, like, I didn't choose to be born in America. I didn't choose to be white. I didn't choose to be male. None of those choices were mine. And so what we're left with in life, I think, is the ability to choose what we can. And you chose to move to another country, which is, I mean, it's a little bit self-gratifying to say this because I did too, but man, that's a big choice that a lot of people don't make. And when you immerse yourself in a foreign culture like that, that's about as good as you can do, about as well as you can do to understand the background and the mindset of other people. I mean, what else can you do? You can, watch their TikToks maybe or something, but you actually went there and made food for people and sat down with them and you took your family and your boys got that experience. And like, you know what I mean? That's about as good as it gets, in my opinion. So, I think that it's great if you have green and you just you're not limited to only what I was born into, that you didn't choose. You made other choices. That's kind of the big one that I thought there.
Yeah.
We always have to mention, Mark Twain's quote about the cure for racism and bigotry being travel, and how easy it is to feel as other. They're other than me. They're different than me. They're a different tribe, until you go there and meet them and realize they're just people getting about their lives, and they're not different than you. Um, yeah. And I spent a second thinking about, well, if I'm wearing yellow glasses and every other person in America is wearing yellow glasses, I don't understand anybody. So, you know, if the fact that we're all wearing yellow glasses is no significance to a helpful understanding of them until I talk to them. And even then, um, and I had a conversation recently that might be pertinent about, have you ever read a Stephen King book called The Dead Zone, or
Mm.
seen the movie?
No.
It's a late 80s movie, maybe, or middle 80s
They made a
movie.
movie? I've never even heard
They
of
made
it.
a movie out of it. Christopher
Okay.
Walken was the lead.
Oh
Um,
man, I love Christopher Walken.
yeah, he's great. He's young. and and in the movie and in the book, the guy has a car accident that leaves him in a coma. And when he comes out of it after 5 years, he has extrasensory perception. If he touches you, he can see into your future. He can see into your past. And he doesn't have control of it, what he sees, but he can change. He can affect change. And that's the dead zone, is the part that he can't really see because it's open to change at this point.
Okay.
If it's the past, there's no dead zone. If it's the future or the present, he can affect change. And there's a part in the book, they didn't include it in the movie, where he becomes a recluse. He has to. He realizes he has to, because he goes out to a restaurant to try and be social back in the world after 5 years of sleeping. And he puts his coat in the coat rack. And when he goes to take his coat out, he brushes his hand against another person's coat. And that other person is slowly losing their mind. And so for him, he is suddenly in that person's mind. And like the way it described in the books is like a slithering bed of snakes that nobody can tell, and he's keeping a good face on it. But this guy's going to go on top of a bell tower and start shooting people. And, you know, Stephen King was pretty famous for those stories. But it was an interesting idea, just that if you could touch someone else's mind that way, would you want to do it? Would you want to see that much into another person, or have another person see that much into you?
That's
It's coming up, man. Like, the first person to use Neuralink has already gone by. That person has recovered muscular control from a severe spinal injury. They can move appendages they couldn't move before. It's a thing. And Elon Musk's prediction that we're going to be communicating without words in less than a decade, made several years ago now.
What?
Because people are going to have Neuralink, and we are going to Bluetooth our actual thoughts to other people.
I don't know if I'm down with that.
Right? I mean, so now think again about your yellow colored glasses and understanding the world, and like there's a layer, a buffer that we have. Yeah, maybe not to ourselves, sometimes to ourselves, but to our mate, to your kids, there's a filter that your things pass through. And are you even interested in that filter being removed and the unadulterated thoughts that run through your head being shared with anybody?
No.
And I think you're a good dude, and I think I'm a good person, but there's no fucking way. No way do I want someone else to hear my totally unfiltered thoughts.
I'll tell you right now, I'm not a good dude. I'll tell you.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not.
Well, I mean, everybody's got their faults, you know, and to just have those on full display for everybody would be. Man. I don't know that would make a better world.
No. Yeah, well, that made me think of a story. Guy, he was a preacher. I was listening to him, and he was saying how he had something. I don't remember all the details, but basically, this other person or other group of people started bad mouthing him and started saying all this stuff about him, saying stuff that he had done, and just starting a lot of rumors and all sorts of stuff. And pretty much everything they were saying was completely false. None of it was true, but it was very damaging to his reputation. It was he was like an itinerant he went around all over the place speaking at churches and retreats and different stuff. And so it really had a very real impact on his ability to minister and connect with people and speak and stuff like that. And somebody came to him and was like, something to the effect of like, aren't you going to do anything about this? Like, aren't you going to like, are you going to sue him? Are you going to do like, what are you going to do? And his basic response was, well, even though what they said is not true, if they knew what was actually going on in here
Mm.
and could tell all this stuff, it would be way worse. So I'm not going to worry about it. Basically, that's not exactly what he said, but to that effect, like the rumors they're spreading about me are nothing compared to like the actual thoughts that are going on in my mind. You
Mm.
know, like just admitting that he was, I mean, what we're talking about, like there's so much going on in there, and some of it we can't control, some of it we absolutely can. You know, times I just let my mind run, or I'm
Mm.
angry, or I'm whatever, jealous, or who knows, all sorts of stupid, terrible, sinful stuff. You know.
Yeah. I have to say though that with respect to the story you just told, that the first thing that came to mind was that of the smallest of good deeds is better than the greatest of good intentions. And generally that translates to, if you do something in the world, that's something that actually is meaningful or real. And the things that you think or what you intend to do, those are much, much, much less important. So all the crappy stuff that rolls around in our heads all day long, that we are not acting upon. I mean, we're not that far from just murdering our neighbor because we want a chicken wing, like we're I mean, depending on your belief system, where we came from, where we're headed, like that we were murderous not that long ago. And it is only through controlling those thoughts and sort of base desires or impulses that we, I think, became human. Um, and so don't know, I don't know if I would agree, because I think that I don't know necessarily that you have to defend yourself, like especially as we get into, I'm in my middle age. If somebody talks crap about me, there's people that know me, and I think that would have faith in who I am. I hope, and I'm not. I just can't worry about convincing the other people. As much as I would like always the truth to be an empirical thing, like an idea of an actual uh, truth in the world, like I don't know. Do we have that? Did we ever have that? Is there an objective truth in the world? I mean, I'm not sure, but would be nice if people knew that. But if they don't,
Yeah.
you can. I mean, greater philosophers than anything that I'm ever going to come up with. If Marcus Aurelius talked at length about not wasting his time thinking about what every person as part of the masses thought about him, and he just had to get on with his life. And I think that's true words for all of us. So
Yeah.
maybe your guy had the right idea.
Yeah.
But
And
you would not get
I'm not
Neuralink. Is
quoting him
that what I'm
perfectly.
hearing? You would not sign up for Neuralink.
Well, not if it's going to give people access to all of my deepest, darkest thoughts. Absolutely not.
But on the other end of that, like, think about the problems that exist in the world because people are so practiced at deception.
Yeah.
And reading any classic story, Wuthering Heights, like pick anything, and there's deception in there, and that's the hallmark of the story, is overcoming that sense of deception or the trickery from another human being, or murder or adultery or whatever. Like we're pretty fucking crafty most of the time, and if you could get by that. Did you ever see Powder? Did you ever see that movie?
Yeah. Yeah.
The kid that's kind of albino
Right.
but has, again, extrasensory perception.
Yeah.
And there's a girl that he likes in the movie, and he's talking to the girl about what's possible between people when we don't have any of the little lies or deceptions that go on every single day, all the time. And would that world be worth trying?
Dude, I got a book for you to read. That's
With
great. Okay. Thought experiment just for a second.
okay.
This is really cool. Let's talk out loud. Tell me, what would society be like if no one ever stole anything? Just stealing. We're just going to pick that one thing.
Hmm.
What
Well,
would it be like? What would be different? Tell me some of the practical things that would be different right now for you.
the first thing that comes to mind is there would be no keys.
Exactly. That's one thing. I mean, super simple, but yep. What else?
There would be no locks. There would
No passwords.
no
You'd
passwords.
never have to remember a password.
Mm-mm.
You wouldn't need an ATM code.
Yeah, what a world.
Now,
No
I mean,
stealing at all.
Yeah, I'm like, not at all, nothing. I mean, you.
How? Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to go any deeper than no keys, no locks, and the stuff that we said. You'd get in your car and push a button and it would start because it's your car and nobody's ever going to take it. I guess weapons would still be part of our culture because people might still have fear about their lives being in jeopardy.
Yeah, but now add in no lying. What if there was no lying, no deception, no dishonesty at all? You would be able to trust everything that people said, and you would know that they meant it, and you know they're telling the truth. Think how much more relaxed we would be in conversation, how much more at ease, the peace. Like you could ask someone a question and you know that they're going to tell you the truth, the honest truth, even if it hurts your feelings.
But we got to circle back. You said no to Neuralink. But I can see in your face you like these two ideas. No stealing, no lying.
Yeah, but Neuralink doesn't have to do with deception or dishonesty or stealing or lying.
Doesn't it? You are instantly accountable.
So. Huh?
Instantly accountable. Your very real thoughts.
Sorry. I'm saying we don't have to have Neuralink to be honest and trustworthy. And Neuralink isn't the only way to that, is what I thought that's what you were saying, that's get you there. I was saying, no, we can do that without Neuralink.
We could. But the difficulty of a system like that is that just one error, one example takes it down, right? Like the trust network of you aren't able to lie to me, and then somebody in China comes up with a lie that works, and then the whole system breaks down. And I'm not saying that Neuralink is the way. I'm just saying that there are things that you could look at as a utopia sort of idea of the elevation of humanity to greater ideals or a more pure society or whatever you want to call it. Neuralink might be a step in that direction, and it might be the bed of snakes that we reach our hand into and don't want to touch. I don't know.
Yeah, I think obviously I don't know anything about it, but just my knee-jerk reaction is that it's the bed of snakes because it's forced. I think anything like that is not voluntary. So like where we are, you and I are honest with one another, and we don't steal from one another. We don't lie to each other voluntarily. That is very different than us doing that with each other because we're forced to by something in our brain. That is not the same thing. And I think it's much more meaningful and more real and more valuable when we're doing it voluntarily, even if we're not doing it perfectly. But where we're trying, like that's what I do with my wife, right? That's what you do with Steph. You voluntarily do those two things and way more, right? 1,000 things we haven't even mentioned voluntarily. And that actually makes your love for her more significant, more real, more powerful, because you're choosing to give up all those things or to include all those things in your relationship with her. And then even when you make a mistake and you do lie or you do whatever, it doesn't matter, and she calls you out on it, or maybe she doesn't, you just confess on your own and you apologize and you try to make it right. And you, like, to me, that's way more valuable. And that's the society. I think that's because when you were talking about, no deception or whatever, that type of society, that type of place. And so that's why I was like, oh man, I got a book that I think you would really enjoy. And it's called, Rumors of a Better Country. And so what he does is he actually goes through, he uses the 10 Commandments.
Sorry, I got to write that down.
Rumors of a Better Country. I'll bring you a copy of it when I come up to Summerfest. You might be able to get it on Amazon. I'm not sure.
I have. Yeah.
Marsh Moyle is the guy's name.
Hold on, let me get to your name. Because you've recommended a few things.
Anyway, that's one of the things he talks about is like, he uses the 10 Commandments as a kind of a starting block. What would it be like if we actually lived out those things? And
sorry,
and
say it again.
Kind of do what?
Say the title again.
Rumors of a Better Country. And the author, his name is Marsh, like Marsh, Moyle, Moyle, I think. But basically, he one of the points he makes, and I haven't finished, I'm about halfway through, is just how invaluable trust is to a well-functioning, healthy society, and to a flourishing, thriving, happy, joyful, peaceful society. Is that you have to have trust. There has to be trust at the foundation of any society.
But I guess that, I mean, I can agree, and I do. But we don't have that. And when was the last time that we did? Did we ever? And sort of the reaching for those kind of ideals, I think, is great. Or, if you want to, if somebody wants to write down what utopia looks like, we can all aspire to that. But the truth is, like, we can't even convince 10 people in the same room, like, what makes good coffee, we won't get agreement, and the potential agreement of, hey, it's better if you don't steal. Like, everybody's life is better. And you go out and, I mean, stealing is taking someone else's effort and making it your own. Right. And if everybody didn't do that, if everybody had the work ethic to do their own thing, to do the right thing, and of course that society's better, but there's no way we're convincing 8 billion people that that's the way to go. So I guess I'm not, like, I guess what I was thinking while you were talking was, could we have a world, could you envision a world where just overnight everybody has Neuralink? And that's what they grew up with. That automatic accountability, like my thoughts are not hidden, like someone else that I have that has authorization can check and see if I stole that car. Can, did you rob that bank? Did you scam that old lady but with some stupid U.S. Postal Service text or something, like the ones I get every day? And everybody knew that was possible. And then, is the world different in a better way if that's what they were born with? Or do you think that there's ever a time that as we get more and more billions of people that we're going to be able to have anything more than about a 10-person tribe where we genuinely trust those other 9 people?
I mean, are you asking me?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, don't you think that's a real question? Like, how?
Yeah, I honestly think that the answer is no, because, I mean, I think, you can probably guess what I'm going to say, because we've talked about this enough, that, I mean, we're sinners. Like, sin is a part of this world. And the only answer to sin is God, is Christ. I mean, that's just, I mean, I don't know what else to say. Like, I have to say what I believe to be the truth.
Sure.
Like, how can I not be honest? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think Neuralink, or even creating more laws or programs or systems, or even more churches, because a church is not in and of itself, that doesn't get people close to God. Just having a church, just getting together with people, that's not God. So I don't know. I don't think that's possible. And that's why I think I don't think I'm being cynical when I say that that Neuralink or anything like that technologically will fix the problem. It'll just create a new problem in some other way that we can't anticipate.
Mm.
Because I think the only solution for sin is holiness. And the only way that you can be holy is by the power of something greater than you. I don't see any other way around it.
Mm.
Like I cannot make myself holy. I can't do it. So that means I'm dependent. If I'm going to be made holy, there has to be something bigger and better and greater than me that makes me that.
Mm.
And that's a gift. If it can happen, that is a gift.
Mm.
And if I can be made holy, that means you can be made holy, because I'm telling you, I'm not a good person. So if I can be made holy by something else, and you can be made holy, and she can be made holy, and she can be made holy, and he can, and she, and then we can all live in a new creation, a new world, and we've actually been made holy. Okay, now I think we're actually living out what you described, but not by our own means.
There's a couple thoughts that come to mind. You won't believe it. There's a thought that's recurred in my mind, and I'm sure it's not original. Of since the dawn of time, we've had some kind of religion. If you go back through any amount of written history, recorded history, pre-recorded history, there's evidence of religion that goes back. And there is a part of me as a non-religious person that wonders, we've had millennia of religion. And all of them, in my opinion, were based on some very positive and good things. And if there's only a couple that I can call to mind that have not been subverted into something other than the original intended purpose, which was, in my opinion, definitely to make humanity better, and as the guiding purpose of all of it. But then, of course, there's totally disparate minds that are reading whatever it was, or hearing the lessons or whatever, and they come up with their own truths out of those simple truths. And in the millennia of different religions that we've lived under, there's been very few or zero secular times where we lived through scientific reason or logic, or there's pockets of it here and there in civilization, but in a very similar vein, like the men have ruled civilization by and large, all civilizations for as far as we can remember. And there's a part of me that thinks, man, maybe the women should get a shot at it. Like maybe we can do the next 1,000 years with women rulers and see if we can do away with greed and hunger and war and some of the more difficult to swallow concepts in our society. And then on the heels of that, if I agree that we could have a utopia, we could have a people living in the harmony that you described, what is the pathway there? Like how do we you have an idea that works very well for your life, and I take nothing away from that. It's different than what other people have as a pathway in their life, and some of those pathways are called religion, and some of them are not. But what's the right one? How do you show people it's the right one? How do you know it's the right one within yourself? How do we get humanity going in that direction? And if there was a highway towards honesty and doing the right thing and working hard and not stealing, man, put me on it. That's where I'd like to be. I think that it's the same question that a lot of people would ask when they hear those kinds of things, like in your life, these are the answers. These are the answers that you see. And yeah, it's just difficult to get everybody on board with the same thing. And
yeah,
even between you and me, Chris, my the way that my mind works is not the same as the way yours works. And so it's
Yeah.
difficult to get, behind the same ideas all the time. And it just gets obviously exponentially harder as we get bigger, more people.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm interested in the idea of Neuralink because it brings some of the things that I think will bring humanity forward into the realm of what's possible, including that we're so deceptive. And like, you have kids, and I hope I don't disparage your kids by saying that they learn at a very early age. They learn deception,
Oh,
right? And
man.
and the value of getting out of trouble or getting something they want or some little mistruth that I mean, we're so practiced at it, and you're good at seeing it in your kids until they get really good at it, or they get older and they can mask those emotions that go along with the deception, and like, we're so good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And if something could make us more honest, I think that'd be great. But I still don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and sometimes I see the look on their face, or I hear the tone, I hear the words, and I'm like, that sounds exactly like the kind of bullshit that I was saying when I was that age.
Yeah,
Like,
it was.
that's not true.
Okay, so
All right.
before we go and waste all of our hour, we
You
we
have wasted another.
yeah.
You're gonna actually agree with me today.
No. This is great. Man, philosophical discussions are the best. And yeah, in this, like, there is nothing I enjoy more, honestly. I mean, very few things that I can say that I could enjoy more than a discussion with someone who's not defensive about their ideas and is willing to search the dark corners of whatever it is they believe in. And to have someone challenge you on those notions and put your mind into those dark corners, and you have to think about your own beliefs instead of just regurgitating whatever shit you heard from somebody else. Man, that's a friend.
Yeah, it's very valuable.
And so, yeah,
Have you
it's
met
not a
my
waste.
oldest son, Corbin? Have you met him?
No, I haven't met anybody in your family.
Maybe you haven't met any of you haven't even met Tanya, my
I
wife?
don't think so. I mean, I was at the drop zone and I met you. And
oh, dude, that's right. Because I was gonna. Yes, that's right. I was trying to get you all to come stay. Oh, that's right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I thought you had met Tanya somehow, but man, well, that stinks. Because I feel like y'all know each other. Because I'm always talking about you to them, and they're even like, "Oh yeah, JRuss, what
Steph probably feels the same. Oh no, Steph met you in Florida.
Yeah. Well, what I was saying, my oldest son Corbin, he's 20. He is really, really good at getting engaged in these types of conversations and not getting defensive or like. He's just super fun to talk to. He's really fun to talk to with these types of conversations and stuff. Man, he's not afraid to dig in and question and ask and look under rocks and everything. So maybe I should just have him on the show, and I'll just click record, and I'll sit back, and y'all two can just go at it. Y'all would have fun talking.
I mean, I've never heard you put any rules down about what we have to talk about here. So
yeah.
Okay, so we're not wasting an episode. We talked about that. But we had a couple of situations at Skydive Chicago today that I did want to touch on. The first one was very personal, so I want to talk about that. It has to do with off-field landings. Okay. And so we were team training today, and so our normal day of jumping is 4 up, 1 down, 16 total. And we weren't able to jump that fast today because there's other stuff. There's a big wave going on, big wave belly thing. But we're trying to crank out jumps, and we're fighting clouds, as a lot of Midwestern drop zones do, or just drop zones generally. And I am one of the probably pretty few number of people who, when the pilot looks in the rearview mirror and I give him a correction on the flight path, that he'll actually listen. And we had a clear path today. We were running west all day long because that was the prevailing upper winds. And we had a clear path to the southwest along the runway. and he started out running west, and he didn't look in the rear view for a while, and we were getting close to a cloud, and he finally looked back, and I started pointing to the south, and he banked the plane around, and I gave him a thumbs up where I thought we were good. And we exited as the first group, and then several other groups exited after us. And of the 5 members of my team, 3 of us made it back to the drop zone, just barely getting across the river and finding a safe landing spot. And while I was under canopy at about 1,500 feet, crossing the river and thinking, well, I'm not sure this was the right choice, I thought about the people that had gotten out after me, who I knew. I mean, sometimes when we're flying, I can see people in free fall behind us. And so I knew there were other groups out behind us, and they're going to be further away than I am, more of a bad spot. And so I did make it back to the drop zone. I hit the very corner of an immense landing area and didn't have a great landing. I didn't have much left on my flare. 2 of my teammates landed off in an open field, but one of them, very experienced jumper, made a low-ish turn to final to try to get into the quite strong ground winds that were coming from the west. And as he faced into the wind, he went behind the tree line where the wind just dropped off. And so suddenly he's going quite fast with that low turn and biffed himself into the ground a little bit. And so he's going to be okay, but he tweaked his back, and just not a great landing. Other teammate was fine. And then a third person followed them into that open landing area, and he injured his heel. Not bad, just a bruised heel. But it made me think that about talking about a number of issues on that jump. And one that I want to point out sort of selfishly to the people who might be listening, who are not at the door, and they want to jump, and I want to jump. I'm up there because I want to skydive. And you don't want to hear that you just blew your jump lift ticket on a ride in the airplane. You want to get out of the airplane. But I can tell you from firsthand experience that sitting at the door and making a decision for 21 other people that has possibly profound consequences to their lives is not that much fun to do. Yeah. And I make it. I'm okay with that role. It's kind of where I'm at in my career. And certainly people who have fewer jumps than, I mean, I by far had the most jumps on the plane. And so everyone's kind of, even my teammates are looking at me like, are we going or are we not going? But when you're in the back of the plane thinking, man, I really would like to skydive, sometimes it's hard to connect the dots on, I would like to jump out of this plane with, I would like to not have a broken back. And so just to try and impress on people that the person that's up there is trying to make a good call, but especially in those kinds of conditions, like like all the loads today where I knew I was going to have to make that call, I'm sitting up in the plane and saying, guys, you have to look down. What's good for me is perhaps not good for you. You've got to look down when you get to the door. This isn't a blue sky day where the first group goes and everybody just piles out of the plane. And so a little bit of, I don't know, salving my ego or something, that those 2 guys got mildly hurt on a decision that I made. But off-field landings present an interesting challenge, even in good conditions. Even like here at Skydive Chicago, there's a ton of good off-field landing sites, flat, open, a ton. It's farmland. But yet, we try to be super, super cautious about getting everybody back to the landing area, because when you just experience, I mean, the person who got slightly injured on my team has multiple thousands of jumps, is an experienced demo jumper. He's rated as a demo jumper. That's what he does a lot of his skydiving career. And yet he made a somewhat bad call for a low turn. So off-field landings present some really interesting complications for most people. And this is one of the reasons why I think it's super, super important for people to get into canopy courses at a very young age, and then to continue to take canopy courses as you progress as a skydiver, to put yourself in a controlled situation where you simulate the uncontrolled situation. And every canopy course that I know is going to do long spot recovery and landing off field and downwind, crosswind, all those kinds of landings where you're going to get preparation in a semi-controlled environment for the time that you can't control the variables. And I think that's absolutely critical.
Yeah. That's good. I remember the first time I landed off was actually in Colorado. It was the first time it wasn't my first jump at that drop zone, but that I jumped there one day. That was the only day I ever jumped at that drop zone. So I think it was the third jump of the day. And I also had low jump numbers at that time. Like I probably only had maybe between 150 and 200 jumps, maybe something like that. So I was, very inexperienced, but I remember when I kind of realized like maybe I was going to be off, but it was a big airport. And so even though I was landing off, I was still landing on the airport, but I was just not in the landing area, And so I remember at some point I kind of realized like, I'm probably not going to make it back, but I was so focused on trying to get as close as like trying to get back. And then as I got closer and closer to the ground, I didn't do any kind of landing pattern or anything. I wasn't paying attention to the wind on the ground, which would have been very easy because where I landed was like waist high grass. So it was super easy to see which direction the wind was going, but I wasn't thinking about that at all. I was just thinking about trying to get back. And so when I landed, it was downwind, Thankfully it wasn't like it was probably only like a 8 or 10 mile an hour wind. So it wasn't hard or anything, but I was inexperienced. I had never landed downwind and I had a bigger canopy. So when I did land, I tried to flare and there was like a little, how sometimes the taxiway, there's like a break in the grass where they can taxi out onto like another taxiway or whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like a little, well, that was like, 60 yards away from where I thought I was going to land. Not 60, that's an exaggeration, 40 yards away, but whatever. But because I was downwind landing, I ended up like skidding across on my knees and hands on that piece of tarmac. I was like, I had no idea how I even ended up there. And then thankfully another experienced jumper had seen that I was going to be off and they actually landed with me, but they landed into the wind. And they came over there real quick and were helping me up. And he's like, dude, why'd you land downwind? What were you doing? Like, it's like, what do you mean downwind? He's like, you landed downwind. Why didn't you turn into the wind? I was like, I don't know. Just so confused. And like,
yeah, it's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So from your story, you were on a bigger canopy. Mm-hmm. What size? 190, 170?
I think that was a Pilot 188.
188.
I believe is what that canopy was.
And you're about 180 pounds?
185. Yeah.
Yep.
Out the door, like, add another 30 pounds. So
yeah, so just slightly over 1-to-1 on that size canopy, right?
Yep.
And so the forward speed, probably in the 14 mile an hour range, 15, something like that.
Is that let's say it was an 8 mile an hour wind behind me or 10 miles behind me?
No, that's what I'm trying to point out. You have a no wind scenario, 14 mile an hour, roughly. I mean, it depends on the canopy and blah, 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 but I'm close there. And then you add an 8 mile an hour downwinder. You actually said 8 to 10. What's the fastest you're comfortable jumping out of a moving car?
Yeah, 5.
Right? Like you just went downwind in a 22 to 24 mile an hour range.
Even say 15. That's faster than I can run.
Yeah. So that's an interesting consideration, right? Because you got overwhelmed on the downwind landing. I'm trying to get close, and you forget about some of the fundamentals of landing that but because of those extra stressors, you set aside for a little while.
And I was wondering why my flare was so weak. Like I didn't know. I was like, what's it? I'm just like, didn't feel like I had any flare strength. And then I'm like going super fast, and then I'm on the asphalt. Like, what the heck?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of hopefully the points that'll stay with people is, and I think my teammates did this, and I went through my mind as well. So I'm hoping this is accurate information for what they experienced. But the first moment that it crosses your mind, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it back. Right then, what was the ground wind? What was I landing in before? What did I see when I took off? Okay, now, is there a place I can go to right now that's wide open, has nothing to do with the main landing area, and land into that wind? And then go do that. Like, if you're not sure you're making it back, go land in a safe landing area where you can choose to go into the wind. And luckily, my barely making it to the landing area was directly into the wind, and I did have a flare, and I did have a clear landing area. And the guys that landed off had a clear landing area, not really directly into the wind, but they did have a safe landing area. They could have landed safely, even with the minor injury. But the first second you think, man, I don't know if I'm going to make this, find another spot and don't get hurt.
And I wonder if sometimes people, and myself included, you know, like, I don't want to land off, don't even want to consider that as an option until it's like, absolutely, I'm landing, you know, like, I don't even want to consider it. And part of that, I think, is because like the stigma with landing off is like, oh, you didn't know what you're doing, or you made a bad choice, or not. I'm not saying the stigma is right. I'm not saying, but that maybe that's what it is. Or, you know, at my home drop zone, one of the best areas to land off is this huge, giant open field, but that landowner does not like us. So we tell people, you know, we say, hey, try not to land in there. Like, that guy hates us. He's just really mad at us for lots of reasons, you know? And so there's that too. Then people are like, oh, I don't want to piss off the landowner. And if I do, then is that going to make the DZM mad, or is somebody going to get pissed at me, or, you know, then I made a mistake or whatever. But just telling yourself, look, it doesn't, even if people at the drop zone are frustrated at you for landing off, they're going to be much happier that you landed off rather than having to call in life flight or an ambulance or something else to take you off because you jacked yourself up. You know, like, landing off is always better than that, right? Like, no matter how frustrated people get, or a landowner or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, at least you're not riding home in an ambulance.
Right. You can skydive more that day. You can skydive tomorrow. You're not learning to walk again. Yeah. Okay, so that's going to dovetail right into the second issue that happened today, which was a very experienced jumper who will remain unnamed, had an equipment issue with a hung up toggle and didn't realize that it was a problem until he flared. And that motion that Chris just made with his head of, what? That confused look, that should happen to every single person who hears this, including that guy that got hurt, if he ever hears this. Because for you not to understand that your toggle is hung up until you're flaring is wrong.
Doesn't that mean you never touched it?
I don't have all the information. And so I have to speculate a little bit. I haven't spoken to him. I've gotten reportings from secondhand from a few different people. So you have to take my information with a grain of salt, but that is what I was told.
That's what you understood.
That's what I understood of the situation. And he did go away in an ambulance. And I don't know the extent of his injuries. But it sparked when we got done jumping. We took a little walk around with the dogs, and my whole team was there, and we started talking about, like, how can that happen? Like, everybody knows this guy, and how could he not know that? And all of us were sort of saying, like, okay, well, I pop my toggles and then they're in my hand constantly. And to be honest, like, once I get my toggles out, it's very unlikely I'm going to use them again. But when I pop them, I see the effect. I see and feel the effect on my canopy. And then most of the time, my hands go up to the rears, and that's where they remain for the entire skydive. But that initial movement, I see the effect that it's having. And I'm not doing a full controllability check just to call myself out there, but for sure, it's not like I'm leaving there stowed until I turn on to final. That would be crazy. And I don't know if that's what this person did, but
but I have to ask the question, how do you know that it was a problem with a toggle? How do you know that?
There were photographs taken of the equipment afterwards, and then a discussion with the jumper while they were waiting for emergency services. And
Okay. Okay. So
and
firsthand knowledge from the jumper.
yeah, I mean, I
Okay.
haven't. He's a buddy. I haven't spoken to him yet.
But that wasn't a speculation from people on the ground, like, oh, it looked like whatever.
No, no, no,
But
no.
they
That
actually.
was.
Okay,
I
that's
mean,
all.
that's
I just wanted to clarify.
probably fairly accurate to the
So do
situation.
you know, like, what it was just a stuck toggle? What do you mean? Can you? What more do you know about the toggle? What do you mean?
Eh, I what I heard was that it was a removable slider, like an RDS system, and RDS removable deployment system. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, swoopers will use an RDS where their slider has a pretty long string that runs back to the deployment bag. And so once the canopy comes out of the bag's not attached to the pilot chute, and the bag are not attached to the top skin of the canopy the way that they would normally be attached, like on almost everybody's, including mine. It's attached to the slider by that long string. And so it trails out behind you, and then you take the slider off. It's removable, and then you kind of ball it all up and you stuff it in a pocket or something. And then it really does make a big difference to the flight of your canopy performance.
Just to clarify real quick, that what you just described is truly an RDS, removable
Yes,
deployment system.
full RDS.
There is such a thing as just a removable slider.
Yep.
And so sometimes you'll see people just removing their slider. That's not an RDS, right?
Right. And so my slider is removable, and I remove it on every jump because when I was swoop competing years ago, I got kind of used to taking it off. The bag and pilot chute are still attached to the top skin the way they normally would be, but I like the removable slider, even though it takes a little bit extra time to reassemble. When I get under canopy, there's no time where I'm like messing with stuff where my head's down and then like putting it onto the keeper. I'm up and looking around, and all of this removing of the slider happens while I'm still totally visually aware, and I just yank it off and stuff it down my shirt, and I'm done.
Yeah.
And so that process of like housekeeping, mine is super quick, and I never lose sight of what's in front of me, which I really like. Okay, so anyway, it was my understanding that some part of the removable slider, one of the rings, ended up being somehow caught up with his toggle or the excess of his toggle. So that when he flared, the canopy basically just piled him into the ground because he executed a hard turn instead of a flare, which has killed people in the past. A drop toggle is, especially on a high-speed canopy, can be fatal. So anyway, the discussion with the team, with my teammates, just kind of revolved around like what habits do you get into where you potentially wouldn't understand that situation until too low to deal with it. And like, are there people out there who leave their toggles stowed until they turn on to final because they regularly open low, they don't have enough time for housekeeping, this is just their process? Well, if you turn to final at 500 feet and realize that you've got a toggle that's messed up, you're landing on rears. And if you don't normally land on rears, that's going to be an interesting and probably difficult landing. And so my takeaway, I guess, from that was just to remind people that those kinds of things, even though a lot of us are not students anymore, those kinds of procedures like a controllability check or at your version of a controllability to check to make sure that your equipment is properly functioning before you get to the ground is still important at 1,000 jumps or 10,000 jumps or 500 jumps or wherever you're at. Like finding out that you don't have a functioning canopy at 500 feet is a difficult day.
Man. Yeah, that would be. Yeah.
My understanding is he'll make a full recovery, so that I feel a little bit better about talking about this. I haven't spoken to him personally, but hopefully he's going to be all good.
So kind of on that subject, I don't know how easy this will be to talk about without a visual, but do you have a specific, I'm sure you have a specific way that you stow the excess from your brake lines, right? Everybody has a way that they do it.
Yep.
How do you stow the excess of your brake lines, and do you do it a specific way because you really, really believe it's the best way, or it's just one good way and there's plenty of other good ways?
So I don't. I don't stow my excess.
What do you mean? You just leave it?
I leave it out.
For real?
And I'm not counseling anyone to do that. But I do that for two reasons. One is that when I pull my removable over a stowed amount of excess, that extra diameter of bulk has many times popped my brake, because
Okay.
the removing of the slider is one kind of quick motion of there's do you know I don't know
Yeah.
if people understand how it
No, you
functions, but
describe it. You can describe it.
there's cutaway cable. There's that are have a hard housing, and the cutaway cable can be retracted into this basically the center of the channel, because in the middle of my slider, front and back, there's a string, and I basically gather that string from front and back in my hand and then just pull down sharply, and it retracts those cutaway cables off of a loop that secured it into the rings, and then it comes off and the rings come all the way down, and I ball that up and put it in my suit. If there's additional bulk from the excess brake line being stowed, the rings get caught as they go over my brake, and many times because a lot of times I don't have somebody packing for me that I know personally, and they'll do that for me, that they think they're doing me a favor, and then I'll pop the brake
Mm-hmm.
as I do my procedure without looking up at that stuff, because I'm looking out in front of me. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that I can see the excess loop stretching out from my toggle. 100% of my jumps, it's trailing out behind where my hands go. I look up then at my toggles, put my hands in my toggles, and I can see that the loop is clear. And when I pull, I'm good. Um, again, I'm not counseling anybody to do what I do. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just saying that that's that I have what I think of as valid reasons for doing it the way that I do. Um, in
Have you ever had anybody, a rigger or anybody else, tell you, "Hey, you shouldn't do that because of this," and they gave you a reason that might be good?
Greg Windmiller, if you're familiar with Greg, he was a U.S. Army. He's a vet. He is retired from the U.S. Army. I think he did full 22 years of service, and in his last few years he was on their canopy piloting team, world level canopy pilot, and he gave a great, very simple reason not to do that.
Okay.
And the reason is, if I stick my hand up in my toggles and I happen to stick my hand through the excess and
Mm-hmm.
then pop the toggle, that's going to be an interesting situation, as the excess loops my fingers
Mm-hmm.
and goes under tension.
Mm-hmm.
And then steering the canopy while I get my fingers out is going to be a challenge for most people, while maintaining spatial awareness, while getting ready to land and not creating a malfunction for yourself. I can't say I did stow my excess at one time, but it's been quite a long time. So I would say conservatively 20,000 jumps without stowing the excess, my pinky got caught once.
Mm.
But that one situation got my heart going, and it was difficult to get my finger out.
Well, we had a guy. I'm going to say kid. He's not a kid, but just younger. This was about two or 2.5 2 years ago, probably. Almost the exact same thing happened. I don't think he left the. I don't think he intentionally didn't stow that excess. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Like, he wasn't
Mm.
purposefully leaving it unstowed. For whatever reason, somehow when he popped his toggles, his finger did get caught in that excess, and it was caught so bad that it ended up ripping off the tip of his finger, like actually removed the tip of
Yeah.
his finger, gone, like gone.
Yep.
And no, I mean, tip of your finger. He was okay. Eventually, he was fine,
Sure.
but it really did. And I wasn't even thinking that when you said it. I was just genuinely asking what would be a reason not to. Um,
I haven't
I
heard any other good reasons or compelling reasons. Maybe somebody will have one who listens to this, but that's not only is that a good and compelling reason, it's man, it's a really good one. Like
yeah.
if you're not gonna take a moment to pay attention to what's going on up there, which is sort of antithetical to what I just said about keeping your focus out in the front. But I take in that information, I think, really easily by just looking up and seeing a flowing loop that's not near my toggles at the moment, or not in a way that I'm going to stick my hands through.
Yeah.
And like I'd say we made 8 jumps today twice. My excess was not what I expected. And then I do take a second and just clear it and make sure that it's sort of flowing back there before I pop the toggle. But no part of the excess is hidden from me in a way that I can't see.
Yeah. I was asking because the way that I do mine, so, like imagine the riser is going up like, vertical up above your head. And then you've got, most risers have 2 little places to stow that excess. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So whenever I stow my brakes and I put it through the cat eye and then into the little keeper, and then I've got that excess loop. So usually I take the end of the loop, like it's folded in half. I take that down to the bottom and then I thread it up through those 2. So from the bottom going up into there. And the reason I do that is because somebody a long time ago, I think it was a rigger, told me, hey, if you do it this way, when you pull on the handle, you pull the toggle down and then that excess is coming down. Now you're pulling it out from the bottom, right? Does that make sense? I'm pulling the excess out rather than whereas a lot of people put it at the top. When you pull on it, it's kind of like it can create that friction to where it's trying to pull that excess out from the top, pulling it down. So I was like, oh, well, that totally makes sense. So that's how I'm going to do it. And that's how I've been doing it for a long, long time. Until just the other day, another rigger, I was packing and he was just sitting there, we were talking, chatting, goofing off. And he just said, hey, if you can do it like that, that's fine. He goes, but just think about once your canopy opens, now there is tension on that brake line. And he said, so, or maybe he asked me why I did it that way. And I explained it to him. I said, well, because I'm pulling from the bottom, it's going to come out easier. It's not going to pull. And he said, well, just think about this. That brake line is now under tension. So it's actually being pulled from both directions. So when you pull on that toggle, not only are you pulling down, but the canopy is pulling up already. So it is doing that same thing that you're trying to prevent. It's just doing it from the other direction from the canopy. And he goes, I'm not saying that you're doing it wrong. I'm not telling you that you should change. He goes, I'm just giving you something to think about. That can actually create friction from the other direction and make it difficult to get a toggle. One of those toggles, especially if your canopy is not opening uniformly, then there could possibly be a little bit more tension on one side than the other. If you're leaning in your harness and you don't know it, whatever. And he goes, that could make it a little bit more difficult to get one side out than the other. And I was like, actually, that I have had that exact thing happen to me over the past few months. I've had a few times where for some reason, one toggle was much more difficult to come out of, to get free. And he goes, I'm not saying that's what it was, but maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe you were leaning in your harness. You didn't realize it. Somehow you were adding a little bit of extra tension on that one and it didn't want to come out. I was like, okay, I'm going to think about that and pay attention to it. Something to consider.
Is that enough to override what you've been doing?
No, I'm still doing it that same way because I think I can see how both have valid, but it makes me pay, it's made me pay more attention to my body position in my harness, to my hand, releasing them both at the same time. It's made me pay attention more.
Does it make you think that the not disagreement, but different information from those 2 riggers means it'll be difficult to find objective truth in the world?
That one thing, you got me. Dang it! You
just got to come full circle.
No comment.
Yeah.
Dang you, JRuss.
Sorry.
That's funny. No, that's good.
Well, what do you think? It's an hour and 15 minutes that we have not wasted. We've talked about great things.
Yeah. No, that's good, man. It's very good.
And hopefully, our guest will be ready for next week.
Yeah. And I'm excited about Summerfest. I'm really excited.
Yeah. I got to put out a couple of more things to the organizers. The written test for movement. which I'm going to send to everybody. And not that everybody has to necessarily pass it, although hopefully everybody could. But just to have them look at the kind of the nuance of Scott of Chicago. And yeah, but man, it's going to be great. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's always so much fun.
Yeah. Cool. Well, my goal is to get up there, It starts on the 27th, right? So my goal
I would have to look at my calendar, but that's about right. Yeah.
My goal is to get there Thursday night, the 25th, just so I can try to make a couple of jumps on Friday.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping I can make that happen. And then that way Saturday I can be ready to go, feel more confident and prepared to take care of people.
I mean, I think we're just here the week before, so no, that's July. We're in July. Are we in July? Oh gosh, we are. Whew.
Yeah,
man, it goes by so fast. Yeah, what does that say? Yeah, we'll be here on Friday.
Cool.
So we can jump with you, have a little barbecue. Somebody who listens to the podcast asked me today, I can't remember who, hey, JRuss, did you make that meat box you talked about?
Oh, the biltong. Oh, dude, I need to make you one.
What are you talking about? He's like, some meat box, some like you dry cure meat. I'm like, oh, the biltong. I'm like, no, I haven't. But and then started a whole conversation about biltong and how great it is.
Yes.
Yeah, so gonna.
Right,
if you're gonna drive,
that's another good reason for me to drive. I can throw in a biltong dryer and bring it.
Maybe we can prepare some while you're here.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a good butcher shop here.
All right. Well, you've done it again. You've wasted another perfectly good hour listening to the Crave Show.
Did you?
Did you, Chris?
Okay.
I hope it was beneficial. Hope you had fun listening to us. Send us a comment or a message, or if there's other things that you want to hear us talk about or discuss, or people that somebody you'd like us to have on as a guest, please send it to us. We want to hear from you guys. That really is one really fun part of this versus getting comments and feedback from people. So please reach out. Other than that, get out there in the sky and jump out of an airplane with your friends and have some fun, man. Have a good time skydiving. Be safe and have fun. Crave, do more, be better. Thanks, JRuss.
Thanks, Chris. See you next time. See you, everybody. Bye.